A loving husband and father with so much to live for.
He did everything for his family. He was an amazing daddy. He loved life. He loved to be happy.
Is ruthlessly gunned down at home in front of his wife.
When he was laying there on the floor, nothing can prepare you for that.
They stood over the victim's body with a shotgun and delivered a fatal blow.
This wasn't just a random killing. This was an assassination.
Police tracked down several suspects.
She was absolutely the possible person who was involved. She had all the motive.
He began bragging about other involvements that he had had with acts of violence.
And we knew that he and the victim had some bad blood between them.
Just when police think they might never catch the killer,
We were pretty frustrated, and the wind was kind of taken out of our sails.
the case takes a mind-blowing turn.
She sang like a songbird.
He had been in possession of the guns used.
And law enforcement was pretty stunned by that.
To reveal a killer no one imagined.
This is unbelievable.
It was someone that if you passed on the street would look as innocent as they come.
The darkest, blackest.
Panama City lies on the Gulf Coast of Florida's Panhandle.
Our biggest industry is tourism, with millions of people coming to enjoy the Gulf Coast.
The community is very tight. You know most of your neighbors, you know everybody that you do business with on a personal name basis.
But in the early hours of October 6, 1998, the town's sense of safety is rocked by a chilling 911 call.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a call from a woman that her husband had been shot and killed.
There was a lot of shots. I ran back to the bedroom. The killer wasn't in the house. He was coming after us. I literally thought everybody was gonna die. And I was so scared.
Police race to the home, expecting to encounter an active shooter.
Their first thought is clearing that house, making sure that the killer's not still in the house.
As the officer entered, the first thing that he noticed was the victim's body in the kitchen area.
When they started calling out that they were the police and they were there, the wife was in a bedroom.
She had retreated to seek safety for her and her children, which were still in the house.
This is all just happening so quickly. I don't know how I'm supposed to trust that whoever's out there is not the killer.
Officers find no sign of the gunman and assure Angelica it's safe to come out of the bedroom.
The wife came out and she was very, very hysterical.
When they walked me back out, when he was laying there on the floor, I knew he was gone. You have somebody murdering your husband and shooting you, all in seconds. Nothing can prepare you for that.
Angelica identifies the man as her husband, 30-year-old Ron Stovall.
The children were taken to Ron's parents' house. They didn't live too far away. And the victim's wife went to the police department where we could talk to her.
With Angelica and the children out of harm's way, detectives can examine the crime scene.
As a responding detective, I go in and start looking around. Ron, the victim, he had been shot 3 times in the back, once in the hip, and there was a shot to the back of the head.
Investigators find an important clue close to the victim's body.
There were some bloody footprints there on the floor. Part of those footprints had what looked like the letter H, 2 H's kind of next to each other on the sole.
Whoever was wearing that shoe had perpetrated at least part of the crime, because they would have been standing in the victim's blood and then exiting the residence following the homicide.
The Stovall's front door also reveals how the murder unfolded.
We could see her husband was shot outside, and then the killer shot through the door, and he got into the house, and he had shot Ron in the back of the head.
As daylight breaks, a forensic team scours the outside of the home.
They found a handgun projectile out on the sidewalk near the driveway.
The killer shot what it clearly looks like a handgun round to the lower extremities. and then you have a shotgun round to the head. This was overkill. They stood over the body and delivered a fatal blow. When you see that type of crime scene, you're looking immediately for someone that displayed some type of grudge or emotional hatred for the victim.
While forensics wrap up their investigation at the crime scene, detectives head to the police station to speak with Ron's wife, Angelica.
We really took note how emotionally overtaken she was. But she had been an eyewitness to this scene. So she was critical in our investigation.
I can't even comprehend what's going on. He was dead. I did not want to live without him. Ron was truly amazing. He was always full of life, very kind, sincere, very real.
Born in Panama City, Ron Stovall was one of 4 siblings.
He was very close with his family. He was always out doing stuff with school, doing stuff with the church.
He was well known within the community.
Ron served almost 4 years in the Navy. He had felt a commitment to his country and enjoyed his naval service.
Ron always dreamt of having a family, and in 1989, he met his first wife, Tina Trexler.
Tina and Ron got married, and they had one child, they had a daughter.
The marriage was a rocky one, and after 6 years, it fell apart. Soon after, Ron met single mom Angelica at a local beach bar.
He said he knew from the second he saw me that he loved me. Our first night, we went on a date, took me to the beach, to the ocean, put out a blanket, listened to some Marvin Gaye, had Italian food. It was very romantic. He stole my heart, and I was never in love before. I just fell right into his arms.
In 1997, the couple married. Just like Ron, Angelica had a child from a previous relationship. A year later, their family of 4 became 5 when they had a daughter of their own.
Ron took on several jobs. He worked as a waiter. He worked as a delivery man for the UPS companies.
He was very dedicated, and he just got his massage therapy license. He did everything for his family. We were very happy.
Who would want to gun down this loving husband and father in cold blood? At the station, Angelica tells police how the murder unfolded.
I was able to tell the cops everything I knew, and I didn't try to hold anything back. Ron got up at about 3 o'clock every morning, and I would get up and make his lunch for him to take to work.
She explains how Ron left the house and was suddenly ambushed.
There were some shots. I didn't know what was going on. He collapsed on the ground, and the killer tried coming through the door, so I was fighting with him. He got his hand through, I grabbed the gun, and he opened the door with his hand, and I looked down that barrel of that silver gun, and he shot it.
The bullet just misses Angelica.
I ran back to the bedroom.
As Angelica shares more details about the deadly attack, detectives gain important information about the killer.
She described him as male, brown eyes, brown hair, and that he had some type of facial hair, possibly a mustache. She indicated hearing the assailant say to Ron as he was delivering the fatal gunshot wound, "This is for her."
It sounded very evil.
Angelica tells police she doesn't know the meaning behind the killer's words.
We needed to find out who her was, and we needed to find out what made this so personal to her.
Well, this wasn't just a random killing. This was an assassination, is what it was.
Investigators ask Angelica who might want Ron dead.
Immediately, she went to Tina, his ex-wife. Ms. Stovall indicated that the relationship between Ron and his ex-wife was volatile. There was a custody issue over their daughter.
Things got a little bit more sticky with the custody setup, and Ron was filing for full custody of the child.
Could the bitter custody battle have turned deadly?
This was an enormous red flag for us as a team. Whoever her was may have in fact had to do with his ex-wife.
It's probably one of the worst situations we ever deal with, is with the man and woman and children involved. It will just about make a person do anything.
Coming up, police uncover a key piece of evidence.
He brings out a shotgun round that is similar to the one that we've recovered from our crime scene,
leading to a disturbing plot.
The photo identification that made him a prime suspect.
It was his eyes. What I saw was the same person.
And a sickening betrayal no one saw coming.
They planned this whole thing.
None of us had ever worked a case like this.
I do not understand how somebody can have so much hatred.
Are looking into his relationship with his ex-wife, Tina Trexler.
We knew that there was an extreme amount of tension between Ron and his ex-wife, and there was a custody battle that was forthcoming.
Ron and Tina originally shared custody, but Ron had filed a petition basically saying that he wanted full custody of the child.
Up to this point, Tina was that individual that had the most to gain from Ron's death. Perhaps she had not been the one on scene, but it still doesn't eliminate her as having some type of involvement.
This looked like certainly an intentional and a premeditated killing. Might have been a killing for hire.
Detectives speak to Ron's friends and family to get a clearer picture of the animosity with Tina.
When Ron remarried, it was okay, but not really okay. Tina, as well as her family, did not like the new wife, and the situation deteriorated between all of them.
As Ron and Angelica's family grew, Tina's behavior appeared increasingly erratic.
Tina began feeling that Ron was trying to work Tina out of the picture as the mother, and so that had really kind of amplified the rub and the tension.
There was all this, crazy fighting, and it was too hard for his daughter. We were just concerned.
This custody hearing was coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks from when this incident happened.
Tina was absolutely a possible person who was involved in this murder. She had all the motive.
Could the custody battle have driven Ron's ex-wife to murder? Investigators bring Tina in for an interview.
One of the things that was most alarming when we sat down with Tina was that there was no remorse, no emotional activity on her part, that she was even concerned that he was dead.
When investigators ask about her relationship with Ron, Tina's answer is surprising.
We knew there were a lot of hostilities, but when Tina was interviewed, she kind of painted that the relationship with them was cordial, it was friendly. It's a red flag for us as investigators because she's already showing signs of deceit.
With suspicions raised, detectives grilled Tina about her whereabouts in the hours leading up to Ron's murder.
She told us the night before the homicide, she had went to work at a local restaurant. She was a bartender. She got off sometime between 11 and midnight. She had went home and sat and watched TV with her mother. Then after that she had went to bed, and at the time of the homicide itself, she had been home asleep.
Before police can press Tina further, the interview is interrupted.
Her mother had hired a lawyer for her.
The attorney made contact with Tina and immediately ended the interview.
Unable to finish questioning Tina, detectives look into her alibi.
Police were able to establish that she had been at work that night till 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Investigators also speak with Tina's mother, Ann Trexler.
She was the grandmotherly type and was helping Tina get back on her feet and help her get through this divorce.
And come across as a very down-to-earth, nice lady, a housewife, and she confirmed that Tina had been at the house with her watching TV.
Though Tina's alibi checks out, police still theorize that she could have hired someone to kill her ex-husband.
We conducted a preliminary investigation into her financial records. Everything was consistent with that of just a working-class individual making normal purchases.
1 week into the investigation with no concrete evidence pointing at Tina, police look for other suspects. They quickly discover Tina wasn't the only one in a dispute with Ron.
Tina had a boyfriend. His name was Adrian Harris, and there had been some confrontations between Ron and Mr. Harris regarding the way Ron was treating Tina. And in fact, at one point, there had been some threats made on Harris's part.
Had Adrian decided to confront Ron, leading to deadly consequences.
As we began looking into Mr. Harris, whether he was paid to do it or whether he did it on his own, we weren't sure, but the concern was that he may have perpetrated this to make good with Tina for the purpose of helping her.
Investigators tracked down Adrian over 900 miles away near Baltimore.
When we talked with Adrian, he did acknowledge that there was some bad blood between the two of them, but he really kind of downplayed the significance.
The day of the murder, he told us he went to work.
He had clocked in before 7:30, and the time of Ron's death was 3:30 in the morning.
Detectives checked travel times between Baltimore and Panama City.
There was not enough time to get to Panama City from several states away to do the murder and go back home.
While Adrian is ruled out, someone close by catches the investigators' attention.
We talked to his roommate, Guy McInvale.
When the officers went to talk to Adrian's roommate, they discovered the description of the killer that Angelica gave to law enforcement. The roommate fitted quite well.
Guy McInvale had brown eyes, brown hair, and he had a mustache. Now we had another individual that we want to look at.
Once we saw him, Guy fit the description. He was a roommate with Adrian Harris, and we knew that Harris and the victim had some bad blood between them. We thought maybe he went there to kill him.
Is this the break police have been hoping for? Investigators rush to confirm if Guy is a true match for the gunman.
We got pictures of him to show the victim's wife, Angelica, see if he could have been the one that she saw that night.
Back in Panama City, detectives include the picture of Guy into a photo lineup.
Angelica was an essential witness.
She was a witness who can identify the individual that did the crime. Her photographic identification, it was surprising.
His wife, Angelica. Now, detectives hope she can identify the shooter from a photo lineup.
She picked out Guy McInvale as being the killer.
It was his eyes. There was something very, very similar. What I saw was the same person.
There was an identification of Guy McInvale that made him a prime suspect.
We have Ms. Stovall's positive identification of Guy as the individual that was in front of their house. There's a sense of relief that begins to sweep through the unit because you're finally on to a really developing hot lead. We want to now try to establish what type of physical evidence do we actually have between the victim, Ron, and Guy.
Detectives get a search warrant and race over to Guy's Baltimore residence. They make a telling discovery.
We search his items, and looking at me right square in the face was a pair of shoes consistent with the shoe impression that we had at the scene. So we're moving in the right direction.
Police bring Guy to the local police station for questioning.
Although we still were missing the key pieces of evidence, the guns and such as that, we really felt like we're starting to put together the edges of the puzzle. In speaking with Guy, what he provided us for an alibi was that he was in Maryland working. At the end of work, he went home, slept. The next day, he got up, went to work, and so that was his alibi.
Detectives check out Guy's story.
We had had an opportunity to speak with Guy at his place of employment, and we were able to collect some video that correlated with his timeline of what he said. There was physically no way possible for him to have been here in Panama City at the time of the crime.
It turned out that what Guy McInvale said to the police was correct. Guy had an alibi.
Eager to further prove his innocence, Guy volunteers to take a polygraph.
He successfully passed that. So we were able to clear Mr. McInvale.
For police, it's a disappointing setback.
We were pretty frustrated, and it's a roller coaster. It's one of those, now you're back in the lows again, and the wind was kind of taken out of our sails.
Angelica wanted to help the officers along, but her perception at the time of the event was clouded by the terror, the trauma of the incident itself.
I remember him being the same person. It stuck in my head like that, but I was wrong.
It's difficult when you see something that quick that you can say, okay, this is the individual that did the crime.
We thought we had this thing solved, but you just got to go regroup, see what you still have to do, and you just start from there.
Desperate for new leads, investigators review Ron's autopsy report.
The autopsy confirmed 2 different weapons. They told us that it was a .357 round that he had been shot with, plus the shotgun shell. One big thing we learned was that shotgun residue got in his face. We think that Ron was laying there on the floor, and this guy's saying this is for her, and he presses that shotgun to the back of his head, and Ron's looking at him when that went off.
The forensics report contains another crucial detail that could lead police to the killer.
These were close proximity rounds, and so we knew that this was something personal. And the shotgun shell was paramount. It was a unique round. We would be able to identify it. So that was a plus in our corner.
Detectives shared details of the firearms with local law enforcement, hoping to track down their owner.
We work so closely with the different police departments in the area. We talk to them all the time in case something turns up.
As investigators continue to search for answers, Ron's loved ones struggle with their grief.
The best thing in my life was that life. I didn't think I was strong enough to go through anything without him. He was always full of life. Losing your soulmate, you can't even explain how much pain that was. It still is. It'll never go away.
3 weeks after Ron's murder, the investigation is threatening to grow cold, but then police receive a tip that reignites the case.
We got a call from the Panama City Beach Police Department. They had a home invasion out there on the beach. During that arrest, they recovered 2 handguns and a short-barreled shotgun.
They knew from the investigation of the crime scene where Ron Stovall was killed that a shotgun had been used and that a handgun had been used.
That coincides with what we're looking for. We wanted to go over the evidence they had and the circumstances.
Could these be the weapons connected to Ron's murder?
The gentleman that they arrested, we started looking into him and looking at his background and everything. And he had a pretty lengthy criminal history, had actually been linked to some murders in the past. He really caught our attention. This turned out to be a big break.
Police in Panama City are investigating the cold-blooded homicide of husband and father Ron Stovall. They now believe the missing murder weapons were used in a home invasion robbery less than 15 miles away.
When meeting with this investigator from the Beach Police Department, what he produced from his crime scene was this: a handgun and a sawed-off shotgun. That coincides with what we're looking for. Then he brings out a shotgun round that is similar to the one that we've recovered from our crime scene. We have everything that meets the parameters. Now we really believe we're on the right path.
The weapons are sent off to the crime lab. While detectives await the results, they dig deeper into this new lead.
At the Beach Police Department, they identified the individual as Tony Alberto Perez. He went by Tony. He had an extensive criminal history. There was some acts of violence in his past, or some drugs in his past. They really felt like he was a pretty violent individual.
Another detail catches their attention.
Tony had brown eyes, brown hair, and facial hair. He looks just like our guy. He met Miss Stovall's physical description to a T.
Investigators head to the nearby jail where Tony is being held for the home invasion.
He come across as a kind of a likable guy. He was laughing and cutting up, but the more he talked, more red flags went up. He began bragging about other involvements that he had had with acts of violence. He was completely nonchalant about it.
Detectives turn up the heat and ask Tony if he killed Ron Stovall.
Tony totally denied any involvement, any knowledge of Ron, any knowledge of anything that may have happened on that date, and basically told law enforcement, it's not me, I'm not the person.
Despite Tony's denials, investigators believe he's withholding information, and they obtain a search warrant.
Tony Perez had items that he owned stored at the landlord's house, and we're searching through Tony Perez's items over there. And then we find a pair of work boot type shoes.
While inspecting the footwear, detectives notice a key detail.
Those work boots had what looked like the letter H, two H's kind of next to each other on the sole. It looked like what we had found at the crime scene. We got those sent right off to the lab.
As police hunt for more incriminating evidence against Tony, the ballistic results come back.
And we actually got confirmation from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that the guns collected that Tony had been in possession of matched perfectly ballistically to the rounds that we had recovered from our scene.
That evidence right there is one of the biggest things you could have in any murder case. You can find the weapons and find a person who has the weapons. That's major.
So now that we can put Tony, at least the guns, at the scene, that gave us the ability to change gears with Tony. We had the information and ammunition that we needed to confront Tony about what really happened.
Detectives head back to the jail to interview their prime suspect.
As Tony began to kind of spin his version of what happened to Ron, now he acknowledged having a little knowledge of it, but he said that he had loaned his guns to someone else and that he didn't know what they did with them. He didn't have any involvement in it. But what he says is that he had heard Ron was dealing drugs, and that's why he was killed.
We had already done a thorough background on Ron. We knew Ron was not involved in any drug business. We had talked to too many people. He was a happily married man trying to make it in life. That's what Ron was.
Then Tony gave us information that would kind of put us on some individuals that might be involved, and we tracked those individuals down, and we were able to confirm 100% that they had nothing to do with Ron's death.
People sometimes, when they are being questioned, especially when the police have some of the goods on them, will make up stories, and that's what Perez did. As far as the police could determine, that was a total concoction by Tony Perez.
Detectives believe Tony is lying, but wonder what motive he could have to kill Ron.
We were still kind of struggling to establish how Tony would have came into Ron's life.
Going through Tony's belongings, we found some cell phone bills there, and they were linked the name of Kim Miller. Kim Miller turned out to be Tony's girlfriend. So we went to talk to Kim.
Kim Miller is the owner of a Panama City hair salon.
Tony and Kimberly, they had been in a romantic relationship for several months.
We were told by Kim that Tony, he was doing odd things for her. He would come around the hair salon and he would actually shampoo customers' hair, clean up, sweep up the shop, things like that.
Investigators look for a connection between Tony and Ron Stovall.
Kim was familiar with the Stovall homicide. She claims that she first heard about it because she had a customer that had called in and canceled her hair appointment, saying how her ex-son-in-law had been murdered.
When detectives ask Kim for the customer's name, they receive a startling response.
The connection kind of came out of nowhere and almost as a surprise.
Kim's client is Ann Trexler, who happens to be Tina's mother. Tina, Ron's ex-wife.
Shot and killed by criminal Tony Perez. They're now exploring a potential link between Tony and Ron's ex-wife, Tina Trexler.
When Kim Miller indicated that she styled Tina's mother, Ann Trexler's hair, and law enforcement was pretty stunned by that.
Ann Trexler is the mother of Ron's ex-wife, Tina.
We knew of the ongoing hostilities between Ron and Tina. So when we talked with Kim Miller, we asked her if she had ever met Tina, his ex-wife, And she did met her on a couple of occasions. Tina's mother, Ann, however, was a regular client, was in there on a regular basis.
With Tina previously eliminated from the investigation, detectives asked Kim more about Tina's mother, 52-year-old Ann Trexler.
She told us that Ann's talking to her and telling her about these problems with her daughter going through this custody battle with her ex-husband. And she was upset about it. She's afraid she's going to lose her grandchild.
Ann had told Kimberly the Trexlers had to get a second mortgage on their home to provide legal assistance to Tina.
Could the custody battle be the motive behind Ron's murder?
At that point, we were trying to determine exactly who she was. She hadn't really been on our radar at all. We knew that she was Tina's mom. We knew that she was Tina's alibi at the time of this crime.
Ann Trexler, no criminal history, supposedly a wonderful grandmother and fine Christian lady who would never be involved in something like this.
Investigators contact Ron's wife, Angelica, and learn his custody dispute with Tina brought out a different side to his former mother-in-law.
Apparently they had a good relationship when Tina and them were married, but it was just a constant battle over visitation rights. Always just such a fight with her.
Looking to see if Ann could have anything to do with Ron's murder, detectives bring her in for an interview.
When we talked to her, she stated to us that there was no way that she had anything to do with killing. She did not want him dead. Matter of fact, she said she loved him. And then Ann Trexler wanted a lawyer. And once they get a lawyer, you're done talking.
So we're kind of getting a heightened sense of concern as far as her involvement in the case, because she decided to basically not cooperate with the investigation.
Having hit a wall with Ann, detectives get a breakthrough when forensics results arrive.
We got confirmation that Tony's boot was consistent with the shoe impression that we had at the scene. Also, Tony had been in possession of the guns used. Now you've got a personal item putting him at the crime scene. At that point, we knew we had our shooter.
That's a big piece of evidence right there.
We were able to go back to Tony and present him with what we knew.
He admitted killing Ron. His very words were, "Okay, I did it." It's the shortest confession to a murder I've ever taken in my career.
Investigators push Tony to reveal how the crime unfolded, and what he tells them is shocking.
Tony told us that Ann Trexler wanted to have her ex-son-in-law killed and was willing to pay to have it done. When we found out Ann Trexler wanted to hire somebody to kill Ron, I mean, this is unbelievable. Ex-mother-in-law gonna get involved and have pay somebody to kill her ex-son-in-law?
He had met Ann at the hair salon. She was complaining about Ron and that the two of them had worked out a deal for Tony to kill Ron in exchange for about $10,000 to be paid to Tony.
On November 10, 1998, Tony is charged with the first-degree murder of Ron Stovall. But the case is far from over. Detectives turn their attention back to alleged mastermind Ann Trexler. Searching for answers, detectives pull Ann's phone records.
The phone records were a treasure trove of information. They showed a lot of phone traffic between Kim Miller and Antonio Perez and Ann Trexler.
It clearly looks like Kimberly was the middle person between Ann and Tony.
There were phone calls between the Trexler house and Kim Miller at strange hours of the night for strange amounts of time that could not be explained away by saying, we're setting up our rinse and set. Another thing, we were able to show that Ann Trexler received a phone call from Kim Miller the morning right after Ron's death. So there were links to tie Ann Trexler to this plot, but there was no hard, concrete connection of evidentiary value. We needed something else that would show that Ann, in fact, had hired Antonio Perez to kill Ron Stovall.
Tony Perez, he says that he had come to an agreement with Ann Trexler to kill Ron for $10,000.
Detectives scour Ann's financial records for any signs she had commissioned Ron's murder.
We have withdrawals from her bank accounts that coincide with when Tony says he was paid and the amount that he was paid. So now we have proof that what Tony's telling us is accurate regarding being paid. With regards to Ann, none of us had ever worked a case like this. So it was kind of a shock that all of these pieces were kind of lining up to support she is the motivation to this entire crime.
But we felt like we still could not make the case against Ann Trexler. We needed someone to corroborate what Tony Perez said. We needed somebody else that can draw the line between the money and the murder of Ron Stovall.
We have to go back to the middleman in the case, which is Kim Miller.
She's the whole key to this thing.
She was looking at criminal charges, but without her, we're not going to get Ann. She is the only way that we're going to have true accounts of what happened.
We went and picked up Kim Miller and brought her in.
Kim Miller, she stonewalled. She said, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm not telling you anything.
Investigators working the Ron Stovall homicide have charged shooter Tony Perez with murder and believe the mastermind is Ron's former mother-in-law, Ann Trexler. But to build an ironclad case, they need Tony's girlfriend and go-between, Kim Miller, to share what she knows. However, Kim is refusing to talk.
It really wasn't until we actually laid out in front of her the phone records and drew the lines between Ann and her and Tony that we were able to convince her to cooperate with the investigation.
We let her know, she was going to be charged with accessory to the murder, and she's facing life in prison.
Prosecutors offer Kim a deal, a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Ann Trexler. Eventually, Kim takes the deal.
Kim sang like a songbird.
Kimberly was very adamant that there was a deep-seated hatred for Ron on Ann Trexler's part.
She indicated that on many occasions, Ann Trexler ranted and raved about Ron Stovall, how bad he was, that he was going to remove her granddaughter. She wished that somebody would take him out, and it got more and more. Finally, Kim said, okay, if you're really serious, I know somebody who might help you.
Kim lets her know that her boyfriend, Tony Perez, will get rid of him for $10,000. That's how the deal came about.
Kim then reveals how in the early hours of October 6th, Tony drove to the Stovall house to lie in wait for Ron.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, when Ron went out to his vehicle, Tony took a shot at him with a pistol. And Ron ran inside and slammed the door behind him, and Tony Perez fired more shots, which struck Ron in the back.
To finish Ron off, Tony tried to force his way inside the house.
Angelica, she tried to hold the door, and Tony Perez fired a shot that almost struck her. She ran to the other room to call 911.
Tony Perez came in, and he found Ron on the floor and walked up with a shotgun, said, this is for her. Boom. He killed Ron Stovall right there.
When he made the statement, this is for her, it's our belief that Tony was doing this on Ann's behalf.
Tony came there to do one thing, and that was to kill Ron Stovall.
Once he had made his getaway, he was able to reach out to Kimberly and make notice to her that, in fact, the job had been done. And then, of course, she notified Ann.
Kim swears Ron's ex-wife, Tina Trexler, wasn't involved in their murderous plan.
Law enforcement looked at Tina Trexler. Her mother, Ann, may have confided in her, but no one could get to that much evidence to put Tina in the situation of taking Ron's life.
Ann Trexler, she tried to be the grandmotherly type, but she planned this whole thing.
Ann Trexler's thought pattern was Ron Stovall is getting ready to take my only precious granddaughter away from me, and I won't have visitation, and he left my daughter, he married somebody else. He should not be able to get away with this.
From an investigator's perspective, Ann carried just as much weight as Tony. Without Ann, Tony would not have even known who Ron Stovall was.
On February 15th, 2000, Ann Trexler is formally charged with the murder of her former son-in-law, Ron Stovall.
And the cops called and he said, got her, she's in jail. She is morbidly evil. The darkest, blackest soul ever. And then she'll put on a face like she's just Miss Innocent. The killer, he didn't know Ron. Ann knew Ron. I do not understand how somebody can have so much hatred in their body, in their mind, in their heart.
In court, shooter Tony Perez pleads guilty and is sentenced to life without parole. In February 2000, Kim Miller is sentenced to 5 years probation as part of her deal with prosecutors. Finally, in 2001, Ann's trial begins, and she pleads not guilty.
Ann Trexler took the stand. She testified about not being involved. She testified about her concerns of her grandchild and the fact that she had absolutely no involvement.
On May 14th, 2001, the jury finds Ann Trexler guilty of first-degree murder. She's sentenced to life in prison without parole.
There's a little piece. I'm in a little piece in this horrible thing. A little justice, I guess.
Gets a little emotional sometimes. It's not just me. You know, we're a whole team working this thing. We celebrated, I'll just say that. We celebrated this.
The most striking thing to me is that these are all ordinary people. And it's a little bit frightening to think that people who are walking around living everyday, ordinary lives would be capable of this.
The one that initiated it all was someone that if you passed on the street would look as innocent as they come.
For Ron's family, his loss continues to be deeply felt.
I miss him and I love him so much.
This is me, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us.
And the phone rang, and the voice on the other end said, "When was the last time you saw Susan?" And I instantly kind of felt like dread. What has happened?
28-year-old Susan Powell was last seen Sunday.
It has been 3 days.
4 days and counting.
Been missing for a week.
Josh had taken the children on a middle-of-the-night camping trip. It was freezing cold. None of this makes any sense.
He was like, yeah, the kids are here. No, Susan's not with me. And I was like, well, where is she? You know, and he was like, I don't know.
Who were you camping with?
My dad and my mom.
The children said, Mommy was in the van but didn't come back with us. Pretty significant thing for a 4-year-old to tell a detective.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy.
We're too close. There was Stephen wanting to be interviewed, and he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
We interacted in a lot of sexual ways because I enjoy doing that.
She even goes as far as to say, if I die, it may not be an accident.
Okay, go and ask one last question.
How am I going to find your wife without your help?
It is in Puyallup, Washington, where these two families and these two lives intersect. Josh Powell and Susan Cox.
Susan was one of 4 daughters born to Chuck and Judy Cox. She was just, you know, a really typical girl and teenager. She liked to ride horses.
She's my partner in crime. Susan tried to be rebellious, but she had too good of a heart.
She was doing well in church and school, had friends, she loved choir.
She liked her hair done, her nails done, wear stylish clothes.
Susan had gone to cosmetology school. She liked to make other people feel good about themselves.
She got interested in boys as a teenager. She met Josh when she was 18 at a social event for young Mormons, and he was in his 20s, and she hadn't dated a lot.
In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, if you are unmarried, you can attend a congregation that is for other unmarried individuals. And so Josh and Susan are both kind of circulating in this singles crowd.
There are these incredible home movies taken by Josh's dad, which were later released by police, that show the couple's blossoming relationship.
You cut that out of the tape, right?
When I first met Josh, I guess I thought he was cute. He was very confident, and he thought he could get any girl he wanted.
Susan said that he was treating her really well, and he cared about her, and he promised he'd make her happy.
Josh Powell was a ambitious, strong-headed, kind of nerdy guy.
Just tall, dorky, his head's too big for his shoulders. He just looked awkward.
He's got a job, he's got his own place, and he's going to college. Sounding pretty good.
He's going to go to school for business, so he's somebody who is bright when he applies himself.
They quickly fell in love. You see pictures of them, they looked to be completely smitten.
Josh and Susan's relationship goes from not knowing each other at all in October to being engaged by the end of December.
When she told me she was getting married, I wasn't that supportive because she barely knew him. And she just assured me that she's going to be really happy and that he wanted in life what she wanted in life.
Those videos also captured Josh and Susan's wedding and the home life they built together after.
Susan looked very pretty at her wedding. Very traditional, long white dress.
Yeah. So you put the ring in that box and opened it up, put it on.
She was very excited to show off Josh and start their lives together.
Let's see the ring. Let's see that ring. Hold your hand up, please.
It's a young person's love story that quickly becomes dark.
As the reception went on, Josh was ignoring her more and more, taking pictures and hanging out with his family, and then disappearing. I could tell she was getting more agitated.
Susan and Josh didn't have much money, and they found themselves in doing some odd jobs just to get by.
Susan actually was the financial provider. He kept going in and out of jobs and was never really settled with anything.
They moved to West Valley City in Utah because they were looking for a better life. They wanted to improve their economic situation. They buy a house and they start to have a family.
I still remember the day that she told me she was pregnant. It was probably the most impactful day of her life. She was so excited because she always wanted to be a mom.
I would describe Josh as an unattached dad.
Josh wanted to hold Charlie when he wanted to show him off to people. But other than that, he didn't want to change his diaper or feed him or give him a bath.
Hey, buddy. Go up here. Here we go. Okay.
And then they had Braden. And if you look at the family pictures, there is joy and there is sparkle.
Yeah. As little boys, they were rambunctious and mischievous and ran around being typical happy little boys.
What are you watching? Cars.
And Susan loved them more than anything in the world.
Monday morning, December 7th, 2009. They didn't show up.
Debbie Caldwell. She is the daycare provider for Charlie and Braden Powell.
And by 7 o'clock, still no Susan. She had to be to work at 7. So that's not like Susan to be late and not call.
They don't show up that Monday morning as the snowstorm is coming in, and Debbie Caldwell becomes concerned.
Debbie tried to call Susan on the phone, tried to call Josh, couldn't reach anybody.
So I got in the van and I went up the street to her house. And as I pulled into her circle, there was no tire tracks in the driveway. So I pounded on the door and I got no answer.
So Debbie calls the emergency contact, which is Josh's sister Jennifer Graves and Josh's mom, Terry Powell.
The conclusion that we came to was carbon monoxide. They're probably dead in their beds. We ended up calling the police.
911, what is your emergency?
My son and his wife and their 2 children are not responding to calls, or they're not responding to people pounding on their door, and there's no tracks coming out of their driveway. We're worried that maybe gas has been left on or something like that.
And a couple of officers come out on a welfare check. They determine that the best course of action is to break a window to see whether or not the family is in there.
And they said, we'll go in if you'll pay for the window. And so we said, yeah, absolutely.
They find evidence that pointed to some unusual circumstances.
Why would that be here? That just wasn't a normal thing.
Good Monday morning, Utah. It is December 7th.
Snow and ice.
Lick Street, 2 to 4 feet of snow in this.
December 7th, 2009. I was viewing a bank robbery case, and the sergeant asked me to reach out to patrol. They were out on a missing family out on the west side of town.
Jennifer gave permission to the police to break a window and go into the house.
Most officers just kind of shimmied in. He was like, wait, what is up with the fans? There are 2 box fans pointed at the carpet in the living room, and we were all confused.
The officers cleared the entire residence and found nobody inside the home. And the Powell vehicle, which was a blue minivan, it wasn't parked in the garage.
The first thing I saw was Susan's purse was on a table, and I started pulling out things. You know, I found her keys, her wallet, and had her driver's license and her credit card.
You would expect that if she had left on her own, was intending to go someplace, she would have taken those items.
The kitchen, the master bedroom was fairly clean. I mean, the bed wasn't made. The bedroom for the children, the blankets were missing. But yeah, the house was pretty orderly. There was no sign of a disturbance, physical altercation inside of the residence.
Is this 16?
On the morning of December 7th, I was sitting in my family room, homeschooling my 3 kids, and the phone rang. The voice on the other end said, Josh, Susan, and the boys are missing, and nobody's seen them since yesterday. It's just the most horrible, sickening feeling. I just thought, what has happened?
Susan's friends were afraid that they'd gone out on a jaunt because Josh liked to drive and take photographs, and maybe had slipped off a cliff or they'd gotten stuck in the snow.
I made a few phone calls asking other people in the congregation if anyone had seen Susan. Giovanna goes, I actually had dinner with them last night.
Susan asked Giovanna to come over to the house and help her with her knitting and crocheting. While she was there, Josh, who never did anything domestic at all, offered to make people dinner.
She was crocheting on her blanket. I was working on the yarn. Josh and the boys were in the kitchen cooking.
He called his father, Steve, to ask for a recipe for pancakes. Everything he did was a little bit different routine than anybody else would have. He made them one by one. He took a plate into Giovanna. He took a plate with different pancakes made, obviously, into Susan.
He and the boys ate at the table, and he brought our plates into us in the living rooms. I think that was probably very unusual.
I never ever witnessed them ever eating in the living room.
Shortly after that, Susan began to not feel well. Susan laid down, and Josh sort of suggested to Giovanna that it was time for her to leave.
He was going to take the boys sledding, and he and the boys actually drove out before I had finished putting on my seatbelt. That was the last time I saw anybody, around 5.
My brother finally called right away, asked about the kids, asked about Susan, and he was like, yeah, the kids are here. No, Susan's not with me. And I was like, well, where is she? You know, and he was like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, she went to work.
Josh drives all the way south to a place called Point of the Mountain, and he places a phone call to Susan's phone.
Hello, Susan. We are on our way back, and I can't believe that somehow my brain missed the day. I thought today was Sunday. That was really, really stupid. All right, I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
We sat there and waited. It was a long time. It was an hour, maybe more. Josh finally showed up at the house.
Josh had taken the children on a middle-of-the-night camping trip. It was freezing cold. None of this makes any sense, except to him, he does things spontaneously, without any plan. And he took the kids. He said that he left Susan in the house. She was sleeping.
We really wanted to talk with Josh, and we wanted to record it. We had Josh follow us to the substation. He was adamant about taking the boys with him. When's the last time you've seen her?
Probably about midnight of last night. We're finishing up a movie.
What movie did you guys watch?
Mama.
Here you go, Maggie.
Josh is very evasive, and he uses the kids who are in the room to distract away.
He wasn't forthcoming with answers or information, so it was very frustrating.
Well, where did you drive to? Well, I started heading south through Tooele, turned onto the Pony Express.
How far down the Pony Express did you go?
Not very far. Maybe 20 miles, I don't know.
So what did you do once you got there?
Hooked up a heater and had a fire for the boys.
Josh said they drove to Simpson Springs and had s'mores over a campfire. It's not really very clear exactly what happened that evening and the next morning.
We asked him if we could search his minivan, and he agreed. The minivan was full of camping supplies, like there was a tarp, a generator, shovel, graham crackers.
During that search of the minivan, where they find Susan's phone hidden in the center console. It's this pink cell phone, clearly not Josh's.
And he was kind of like deer in headlights. He just kind of looked at us.
In no way did it make any sense. Susan's cell phone is in the van with him. Where the heck was Susan?
Detectives talked to Josh and Susan's son, Charlie.
There was one particular statement that raised a lot of eyebrows.
Who were you camping with? My dad and my mom and my little brother. Dad, your mom, and your brother?
Down the street from the Powells, Kiersey Hellewell sat in a downstairs playroom, wondering, where is Susan? Then came the news. It made her heart beat faster, her stomach turn in somersaults.
I just lost it.
9 o'clock that night, Jennifer told me that Josh and the boys are home, and I'm like, well, where's Susan? And she said, we don't know.
As soon as I heard that he was back and Susan was not with them, I instantly said to myself, what has he done?
It became like this game of telephone, where people were passing along these little bits of information, and suddenly a larger story was coming together.
He said he was out driving around, he'd gone out camping with the boys. And I'm like, are you a crazy man? It was cold.
That is 100% Josh. He did that kind of stuff all the time.
But Susan would have never allowed him to ever take the boys out in the winter to the desert in the middle of the night. Never. I never believed his story at all.
It was determined we didn't have enough probable cause to secure a search warrant for the residence, let alone book Josh into jail, because we didn't have any physical evidence.
The decision was a huge mistake because he burns this metal object into oblivion. So thoroughly destroyed was this item that nobody to this day can say what exactly it was.
Bags and bags of things are shoved into the garbage. Why would you do that the day after your wife disappears?
The following morning, he is observed with the minivan pulled out of the garage, all the doors open, thoroughly cleaning it, wiping it down, vacuuming it.
It was really odd to me because he was running around the house grabbing piles of towels and putting them in the washer, and finally we're like, you've got to go to your interview with the police.
All right, no problem. Have a seat. I'm going to go grab my notebook and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. Josh Powell kind of has a uniform of sorts. It's typically a t-shirt, it's a leather jacket, it's denim pants, and it's dingy white shoes. When Josh goes in to talk to the police, in the tape, you see him initially acting very emotional.
I don't know. I didn't even think it was that. I didn't even sink in yesterday.
He's crying. His voice is shaking. He's just trying to hold it together. But as Detective Maxwell continues to push Josh about what's going on, Josh's demeanor changes.
I can't remember what we were doing.
Okay. So you don't remember what you guys did from 6 o'clock till you went to bed on Saturday night?
I just don't remember what activity we were doing.
Josh is not a participant at all in talking about his missing wife.
Shows no urgency in getting out to go look for her.
During the day, but...
Have you checked any places where she could be?
I haven't had much of a chance to do any of that yet.
He asks police no questions about what they're doing to find her.
What places should we go check to see if we can find her?
CD supply? I don't think she would be there, but she likes them.
And he offers no suggestions, really, about where they might look.
Okay. Let me ask you this before you go.
Go ahead and ask one last question.
How am I going to find your wife without your help?
While I'm interviewing him, another colleague conducted a child forensic interview.
Right there. Yeah. Good job. It's got nice lights, huh? Pretty.
We went to the Children's Justice Center, and they were able to interview Charlie. Braden really wouldn't talk to them.
Okay. Well, what did you do last night?
Go camping.
You went camping? Who were you camping with?
My dad and my mom and my little brother.
The children said, Mommy was in the van but didn't come back with us. A pretty significant thing for a 4-year-old to tell a detective.
We got in the airplane, and the airplane went to Dinosaur National Park.
Oh. You went to an airplane yesterday?
Charlie's interview is perplexing because he says a lot of things that don't make much sense.
Okay, so Charlie, when you guys came home from camping, who came home with you?
My dad
and
my mom stayed at Dinosaur National Park. My mom stayed where a Christmas park.
There was one particular statement that raised a lot of eyebrows. Mommy is with the crystals. And how some people interpreted that was that the boys had been with their mom and she was not alive.
Your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night and that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us. They know that she didn't go with us.
So your kids lie then? Do your kids lie?
Sometimes they do.
With children, they're going to go from threads of truth and reality to fantasy. And maybe things that happened long before Mom disappeared, they're still in his memory, and in his mind sort of fuses together.
She was not with us. I didn't leave her at the Pony Express. I didn't just take her out and drop her off or even do anything. I do want the lawyer, because at this point, I definitely want a lawyer.
Could have I went and booked him into jail? Yeah, I could have. But we wanted to find Susan, so we were putting a GPS tracker on his van. We want him to be out and about and see where he goes.
Instead of picking up his van, he went to the airport. He rented a Ford Focus.
And he vanishes in that rental car for 18 hours. And when he returns that rental car, it has an additional 807 miles on the odometer. To this day, we don't know where Josh went.
Very quickly, the police realized that Josh was lying to them, that he was evasive, and he was not acting like a bereaved husband.
When detectives spoke with Susan's friends, there was a very different picture of this marriage.
She went to see a divorce lawyer, and he told her to make a videotape.
This is me, covering all my bases.
In a developing story, the search continues this morning
for a missing wife and mother in West Valley City.
We had been hearing some buzz in the community that there was a woman who was missing.
28-year-old Susan Powell was last seen
Sunday night, a family dinner with other friends.
It has been 3 days.
4 days and counting.
Been missing for a week.
Utah gets missing persons cases almost every day, so this didn't really stand out as anything out of the normal.
ABC4's Brian Carlson is live at the West Valley Police Station tonight.
Until you start to hear some of the details unravel.
We've learned the search warrants for the Powell's home have now been sealed off.
It's strange that he came home with the kids and not her.
West Valley City Police calling this one a puzzler.
Call it suspicious.
Not even a clue. If you see her or know anything, please contact the West Valley Police Department.
Her friends and family were just starting to ask questions. They were out there with flyers, just trying to find out where she might be.
Volunteers fanned out, handing out flyers of Susan Powell.
Josh, after Susan went missing, he went from the guy who was talking about everything and knew everything to somebody who said nothing, knew nothing.
And a husband who says he does not know what has happened to her.
We know the answers are out there, and we need those who know where she is and what happened to come forward. I held a candlelight vigil a few days into her disappearance, and Josh came to that late.
After the candlelight vigil was over, Josh Powell did show up here in the park with his 2 children, but he quickly left without saying anything.
Charlie had come up to me and he was telling me, Debbie, my hands are cold, my hands are cold. And Josh scooped Charlie up and kind of pulled him away like this.
And reporters were trying to chase him through the snow, and he was walking away from them.
You were camping with the boys?
I have to go get my boys.
There was no point at which Josh ever seemed to even be concerned that Susan was missing. If he wanted to help on the website, he should have detailed a timeline. He never participated in any of the massive, massive efforts that myself and relatives and friends launched to put out flyers in malls and parking lots.
He didn't seem like he was engaged at all in what was going on. It seemed like his mind was somewhere else. He spoke very briefly with local media.
I've been trying to figure out what I can do so I don't sit idle. I'm dealing with this repeatedly.
People were upset that he didn't seem upset that she was missing. And so people thought that's because he's guilty.
Josh, will you give us a comment today?
Pointing the fingers at Joshua, I don't want to do that.
It seemed like initially Josh and Susan were a pretty conservative couple, loving family, couple of kids. We learned that there was a lot of distress, a lot of turmoil in their marriage.
He controlled the money, even though she was the breadwinner.
Josh is very willing to spend money building himself a fancy computer. Susan doesn't get that privilege.
There's my new printer.
With the drawers underneath, shelving.
It's sad to look at that family and know now what was actually going on. Susan was tormented about how troubled the marriage was.
She'd been really happy, he'd been a great husband, and she said that he really changed. He became not affectionate.
Taking a picture of the back of your head.
Awkward to talk about, but they also had issues, you know, in the bedroom. Susan was this beautiful girl, but Josh just was not interested in her sexually. It was just really weird.
He kept her at arm's length. He wouldn't kiss her anymore. He wouldn't touch her. He wouldn't hold her hand.
Josh and Susan's marriage reaches rock bottom in the summer of 2008. Josh and Susan are constantly fighting. They're arguing in front of the kids. Josh is exhibiting extreme control over Susan.
She said one time we were having a screaming fight and I shoved him, pushed me back, and he goes, "If you ever do that again, I'm going to hit you." But she said he never did.
Susan's now starting to think about, I've got to get out of this marriage.
She went to see a divorce lawyer one time for a free consultation at my advice, and he told her to make a videotape of everything in your house.
This is me. July 29th, 2008. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. And here is our safe. Got all sorts of files, financial information, speakers, 5.1 surround sound. Broke this and threw all my DVDs and made a mess. There's a hole in that wall. Beautiful diamond necklace my mom bought. Jade, that's a family heirloom. Not worth thousands of dollars, but I have assets. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after, as much as that's possible.
After she would email me a lot and just say it, I want to do everything in my power to save my marriage before I walk away.
Josh had warned her, if you divorce me, you'll never see the children. So she stayed.
Police ended up discovering the safety deposit box that Susan kept secretly from Josh at the bank where she worked. In it, they found a DVD, some savings bonds, and there was a makeshift will and testament.
The last will and testament, handwritten on one piece of paper, both sides, top to bottom, side to side. There was no room to write another word.
She wrote about how bad the marriage had become. She talked about $1 million life insurance policy that Josh had taken out on her. And she told her boys she would never leave them.
She even goes as far as to say, if I die, it may not be an accident.
That is our biggest piece of evidence. It's her last words. There was no doubt that this document was authored by Susan.
The biggest mystery of this case is why didn't police arrest Josh Powell?
I was frustrated because they hadn't arrested him. I felt they had plenty of evidence to arrest him.
Police have officially named Joshua Powell a person of interest in the disappearance of his wife, Susan.
The West Valley City Police Department took a lot of heat for not throwing the handcuffs on Josh.
There's a pile of circumstantial evidence. Is there enough there to arrest him and book him into jail and hold him accountable? Absolutely there is. Could we? No. The district attorney's office would not file any charges. They were very specific and told us that we needed to wait 12 months with no body.
ABC News reached out to the DA at the time, who declined to respond to this claim and refused to comment on the case.
Within days of Susan's disappearance, he had closed their bank accounts, cashed out her retirement fund, took the boys to Puyallup.
People we talked to say they can't believe that Joshua Powell has emptied the house and left what is ground zero in the disappearance of his wife. They say it only casts more doubt on a man they're having an increasingly difficult time believing.
I suddenly had this thought, I should get Josh to confess.
Jennifer volunteered with the police to wear a wire.
What is this?
I know what I've done, and I haven't done anything.
For right now, you just endure and take each day as you can.
When Josh told police he took the boys camping in the middle of the night in Utah's West Desert, police started their search there.
Detectives are scouring rocky hillsides and abandoned mine tunnels for any signs of Susan Powell.
But police for months and months would search these mines, taking K-9 teams.
And West Valley police detectives say they plan to survey as many as possible.
The most intense part of this search is happening right at the bottom of this hill.
Investigators are swarming the high desert.
Josh told somebody that the best place to dispose of a body would be in a mine.
This is one of those abandoned mine shafts in which detectives went through.
Nobody'd ever find him.
It's like finding a needle in the haystack. A lot of questions still unanswered at this point.
There's a big part of you missing, and you want to know the truth.
But the family won't give up hope. There are still purple ribbons at their home. There are still stickers on car windows.
Josh decides that he's going to take the boys up to his dad's house in Washington to try to get away from the media circus.
You have anything to say?
Josh, will you give us a comment
You're
today?
a person of interest, Josh.
Josh's dad, Steve Powell, he takes control. He shields Josh from the media and becomes his most ardent defender.
I call it Fort Powell because it became a fortress.
They had the windows, blinds drawn. They kept the house dark inside. When the media would knock, they'd open a crack and say no. They weren't talking to anybody.
Hi, I'm trying to find Josh Powell.
They were just their own little country.
Josh isolates himself from the world. He's not talking to police, he's not talking to media, he's certainly not searching for his missing wife.
I suddenly had this thought, I should try and get Josh to confess.
Even Josh's sister, Jennifer Graves, doesn't believe him. So she goes to police and she volunteers to wear a wire and go inside her dad's house.
They were just about to have dinner and we went in and the boys were so excited to see us.
My birthday! It is! It's your birthday, Charlie!
No. I didn't know exactly how to force this confrontation with Josh.
I've been hearing rumors that you'll probably be arrested soon.
Well, I don't know.
Suddenly, I just shoved Josh into the bathroom. And at that point, I was like, drop all pretense. Just tell me where her body is.
We tried to cover it up. Where is Susan?
Jennifer did a phenomenal job.
I just don't believe it anymore. I can see it in your eyes. There's something there.
You're wrong. Well, like I say,
I think you just need to confess now and get it over with.
Don't be ridiculous. I know what I've done, and I haven't done anything.
You told him?
I've already told him to. Every step. I'm not going to violate my attorney's direction.
He still wouldn't budge. He still would not give me anything. I was so frustrated.
Eventually, Steve kicked Jennifer out of the residence, calling her derogatory names.
You are a bitch, is what you are. You talked about your brother and my son that went.
I regret not getting the confession, but I don't regret going.
This is Good Morning America.
And joining us now, Susan's mother and father, Judy.
Susan's parents, from the moment she was missing, they were very involved with the press.
Suspect your son-in-law, your grandchildren, what they saw.
But very quickly, the tone changed.
We made a conscious decision. The politeness wasn't working, so we basically called him out. Josh is a desperate person. He has no valid explanation for where he was.
Chuck Cox and the family, they're putting the purple ribbons, they got the billboard outside the neighborhood.
All these things, I'm sure, are driving him crazy. But for 18 months, he sits in isolation and doesn't talk to anybody about it.
To try to get Josh to talk, we put together the honkin' wave.
What in the world is a honkin' wave?
Thank you!
And he said, you make these, you're going to get these huge signs, and you stand on the really busy corners and get people to honk and wave to show their support.
Thank you. It can cause anxiety and disruption in your suspect's mind. People start to do things as the stress tends to build.
They picked a busy street near a store that they knew Steve and Josh shopped at, and Chuck and Judy, others were out there with signs and everything. And there were television cameras there.
We're not going to stop looking for her no matter how long it takes.
They had these shirts with Susan's face. I think it said, "Have you seen me?" And they had some big posters, and they were waving and balloons and handing out flyers to cars as they went by.
Steve pulled by, and the next thing I know, he's stomping over towards me. You can't do this.
This is a store that I shop at. The only places where they've passed out flyers about Susan, the only place where they've put up billboards, the only place where they've duct taped flyers to light posts.
How is you coming here helping to find Susan?
It isn't helping to find Susan. How is your standing at our neighborhood market helping to find Susan, Chuck?
An extraordinary, personal, and very public confrontation that erupted in the middle of the search for Susan Powell. Several family members were clashing in front of the cameras.
All over the media. If somebody has seen her, then they can report to the police.
And you're only going to do this. Which other stores are you doing this at, Chuck?
It was ugly. It was weird. It was really contentious. I was waiting for the cops to come and haul one of them away.
Since you come out against my family.
Then Josh showed up midway into this confrontation on the street corner, and he had the boys in the van with him.
Chuck Cox uses my sons as pawns in the media to drive whatever message he is trying to drive.
Are you doing okay?
Yeah, that's all right.
I get a call from Josh. We were telling Josh, okay, are you going to do this interview or not? And he finally said yes. You still love her?
Yeah.
He seemed very distant when I spoke to him. He had a hollow look and a stare that I wondered, is he trying to intimidate me? Josh, did you kill your wife? Then there was Steven wanting to be interviewed, and he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
There were just sexual things going on between us.
This is your daughter-in-law.
We were watching this on TV, and our jaws just dropped.
Do you see the birdie?
Where?
Don't crawl in the dirt, boys.
Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
And I was like, where is she? You know, and he was like, I don't know.
I instantly said to myself, what has he done?
You have anything to say?
Josh, will you give us a comment
You're
today?
a person of interest, Josh.
Even his own sister didn't believe him anymore.
I just shoved Josh into the bathroom. And at that point, I was like, drop all pretense. Just tell me where her body is.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy, but she, I don't think, had any idea how creepy the man truly was.
I can love you in a secret way.
We can't talk about Susan or camping. I always keep these as secrets.
During that interview, it's very clear that Charlie has been coached.
He looked more and more like a psychopath. He was running out of places to hide. Slams the door in her face and locks it.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how the story would have ended.
Susan Powell was a young, beautiful mother of 2 adorable children. She just one night vanished.
Detectives have named Josh Powell a person of interest in the case.
He did some local news, some ambush-style interviews where they would ask him something on the fly. And
you were camping with the boys?
I have to go get my boys.
But he never really sat down and talked about what happened. And I'll never forget the first time that I met him. I shook his hand, and a chill just like raced up through my spine. I just shook the hand of a killer. Are we rolling? Why talk now?
Oh, man. I wanted to come out and say something. People who know me know that I'm a good dad. I was a good husband. I provided for them. Susan also contributed.
Nothing he told me during that interview convinced me that he was not part of what happened to her and why she disappeared. I know that you've told police that you were camping. You brought your 2-year-old and your 4-year-old camping. Is that where you were?
I'm not going to talk about anything that my attorney has specifically told me not to.
Okay. Why not just answer where you were when she disappeared?
Josh, can I suggest something?
His father was there, and his father really wanted to be interviewed, which was odd. And I had really no desire to interview Stephen Powell at that time, zero. And I just thought, this is such a waste of time. This is pointless. You think she ran away with another man?
It was another man.
I don't think Josh was in the room for that part of the interview. And before you know it, he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell out of all of the interviews that I've had done out of the whole case. What makes you think that she would leave her kids, her 2 young sons, and run away with another man?
With another man. Susan was very, very sexual with me. She was very flirtatious. I mean, she was just, she did it, I did. I mean, we interacted in a lot of sexual ways because Susan enjoys doing that.
But this is...
I enjoy doing that.
Why are you telling everyone that? That's not to your benefit, but somehow in my dad's own twisted mind, he thought that that was the greatest strategy to keep the dogs off Josh or something. I don't know.
One day we were at an animal park. I was holding Braden in my arms, and I had my hands like this. The part I remember is that Susan came over to take him from me, and instead of just reaching out and grabbing him, she pressed her breasts against my hands, tightly. And she wouldn't let my hands out. And that's nice. It was a cold day, so it was a nice, warm feeling.
Give me a break. But he loved to talk about it.
Josh and Susan, early in their marriage, move in to Steve Powell's home.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy. But she, I don't think, had any idea how creepy the man truly was.
No, I'll do this.
And during this period of time, Steve Powell is constantly filming Susan. This is a man who is collecting video for his own perverse gratification. Because Steve Powell is a voyeur.
He wrote a number of songs about Susan.
Stephen Powell even recorded them and posted them on his website.
I can love you in a secret way. I can love you each and every day.
He had a pseudonym he used, Steve Chantre.
While Josh and Susan were living with my dad, there was a point where she was alone in the car with my dad for a short time while Josh was in the house, and my dad actually hit on her.
He has put his camera in the bag on the center console and left it recording. And so the audio of this conversation is captured.
I've really fallen in love with you.
you know, for the last year and a half, you're about the only thing I can think about. And just, for example, when we were sitting on the couch, it just felt like you were very, you know, I mean, I was extremely aroused, and I think you were somewhat aroused, at least I thought.
I don't know where you're going with this.
That audio was an opportunity to hear Susan in her own voice, telling Steve in no uncertain terms she was not interested.
I'm kind of meaning to talk to you about this, because I realized the last time I came over and that my own father doesn't kiss me and you kiss me, and I didn't like that.
She was extremely upset about that and disturbed, but even more disturbed when Josh just said that that's his dad.
I mean, he was obsessed with Susan. He was absolutely obsessed, and he wanted to talk about it. To me, this was the headline. And it also put a target on Stephen's back. And maybe he had something to do with this. The focus was less on Josh, and it shifted straight to Josh's father, because it was so creepy.
Susan Powell disappeared from her home near Salt Lake City on December 6, 2009. Since then, no word, nothing.
The Powells, they had this entire campaign of their own, and it was to make Susan look bad. It was to make her look like she was promiscuous, like she was looking to leave the marriage and abandon her children.
Susan Cox kept a diary, a secret diary.
Let's stay focused on the journals, okay? Because I think that's very interesting.
I believe that Susan had a liaison with somebody who disappeared the same week she did. She was very open sexually, and when I read her journals, it's clear that most of the relationships she got into with males were ones that she initiated.
Basically, Josh and Stephen, on their own stupidity, were telling, hey, this is, you know, the Holy Grail. This is telling us where Susan is. This is telling us how Susan acted. So that gave us the nexus through the judicial system to get into the house.
When Josh moved in with his father shortly after his wife's disappearance, he took some things from his Utah home, including Susan's journals.
Susan Powell's diaries have taken center stage. According to the search warrant left at the Powell's home, police came looking for 7 very specific diaries, all written by Susan. Diaries that her husband insists will help explain her disappearance.
They went through everything in the house, including all of Steve's, files, journals, computers.
They also find Steve Powell's collection of voyeur videos. Steve Powell is doing things like sliding mirrors under the bathroom door, attempting to get images of Susan while she's undressed.
I love putting her underwear against my face, just smelling her scent.
In his walk-in closet, there was a filing cabinet that was locked, and once we got into that, that was kind of like the unwanted treasure that we found.
Police say inside Powell's bedroom, they found thousands of images of mostly young girls, many naked, being videotaped without their knowledge. Prosecutors say 2 former neighbors, sisters just 7 and 12, were repeatedly videotaped while bathing. Police said Powell shot from his bedroom window into the neighbor's bathroom window using a telephoto lens.
They've looked at Steve Powell, the suspect in Susan's disappearance, and ruled him out, but it's obviously of great concern to detectives as they're scouring through all the material they take out of Steve Powell's home when they see underage neighbor girls undressed on Steve Powell's tapes.
Powell entered a plea of not guilty to 14 counts of voyeurism and 1 count of child pornography.
Stephen Powell was eventually convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for possession of child pornography.
It became apparent eventually these boys were at imminent risk of harm.
The best part that came out of the search warrant with Steve's house was Child Family Services of Washington stepped in and shared with us that they would take custody of the children.
The boys, ages 4 and 6, were taken last night by the state, and now Susan's father is fighting to keep them with him.
They were going to be placed, relative placement with us, so we were essentially foster parents. Josh didn't want them with us.
My sons are safe with me. They're safe in my home. They're safe with my family.
I think Josh's main fear probably was that once Charlie started talking to their grandparents, the story would get out.
They were saying things like, our mommy went with us on the trip but didn't come back. We can only see our mom again if we go camping again.
Braden drew the picture of a minivan with stick people inside, and who's this? Oh, that's me. Who's that? That's Charlie. Who's that? That's Daddy. And he said, and he volunteered, Mommy's in the trunk.
We wanted to interview them.
Will you sit right there?
So I wrote the search warrant for that.
Charlie, has anybody talked to you about your mom? No?
I not know where she is. She got lost somewhere.
During that interview, it's very clear that Charlie has been coached. His answers are extremely evasive.
We can't talk about Susan or camping. I always keep things as secrets.
The only thing we got out of that time was that at one point he said that she went camping, but she didn't come home with them. And then he kind of clammed up after that.
I didn't want to talk to you on this long. I mean it on this many minutes. Now I'm done.
While the Coxes were fighting for custody of the kids and had temporary custody of the boys, they were still essentially wards of the state. Washington State had control over these children, and the Coxes were glorified foster care. So the boys are living with Grandma and Grandpa, and Josh is getting supervised visitation with the boys.
The visitation is at first understood to be taking place at a secure third-party facility, but in short order, Josh takes steps to rent his own house, and he begins pushing the social workers, asking them if they can move visitation to this new house that he's rented, because it's not Steve Powell's house. It shouldn't have the same concerns.
I think the boys were ones that originally told me, hey, we got to go to Daddy's house or something, and I went, oh, really? I was concerned about that.
They were very excited. They were thrilled about the new house, and they were thrilled about the yard at the new house.
I am in their best interest as their father, that I should be raising them.
Through December into early January, he was confident that his reunification motion was going to be granted.
Who has custody of your kids?
Well, that was doomsday for Josh Powell.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how this story would have ended.
Josh, is there anything you'd care to say on your way in?
When Josh was fighting for custody of Charlie and Braden, it wasn't about being a father. It was about beating the Coxes.
The kids seemed like typical kids to a certain extent, but they were undergoing a lot of stress.
I think Josh went into that hearing on February 1st thinking he was going to get his kids back.
I was pretty positive that Josh was the one that killed Susan. I wanted to keep those boys out of that home as long as possible. I was going to West Valley going, hey, guys, we need something.
Pierce County authorities and investigators in Utah shared the common goal of protecting the boys. So the West Valley police in Utah passed along previously unreleased evidence recovered from the Powell's home. When I pushed West Valley and they sent us the disc with the cartoon, incestuous images.
The West Valley City Police Department in Utah had found images on a computer taken out of the house in Sarah Circle way back in December of 2009 that were of great concern. They were characters from popular Nickelodeon shows engaged in sexual acts of incest.
The evidence was allegedly taken from Josh Powell's Utah home by investigators.
They raised very serious questions about Josh's ability to be a safe parent for the boys.
He denies ever looking at any kiddie porn. He denies any knowledge about any of these images that had purportedly been taken off of his computers. Illegal images? No. I asked Mr. Long, he saw nothing on there that he believed would be in violation of the law. Bad taste? I'll give you that from what he was describing to me.
And that's when the judge ruled that the boys would stay with the Coxes longer.
The images are enough that Judge Catherine Nelson is ordering Josh Powell to now undergo a psychosexual evaluation.
This is an exam where they measure aberrant arousal, so you can't lie. Because physically the arousal will show if you're into things that might be illegal.
He had to take psychosexual evaluation, which is one thing that I know he wouldn't pass, but it included a polygraph.
That means that Josh is going to have to do what he's avoided doing from the very first days after Susan disappeared, which is take a lie detector test.
He'd been able to get away with murder, so to speak, for a long time. But a polygraph, I think he was really afraid of. He didn't want to answer all these questions about Susan and how she went missing.
He truly had gone down in flames from being pretty sure that he was going to get his kids back.
Are you disappointed that he's not going to be coming home with you?
I think the arrow was taken out of him. He looked bad. You just saw his welfare diminish.
He looked more and more like a psychopath. He was running out of places to hide, and he was running out of options, and it was tearing him down as a person.
The custody hearing between Chuck and Josh essentially was put on pause. That was on February 1st. We know then that Josh spent the next 4 days preparing.
We know that he transferred some of his finances.
He gathered up some of the boys' things and toys, took them to Salvation Army and Goodwill. He bought 5-gallon gas cans and went and filled them with gas.
I said, look, I am afraid Josh is backed into a corner with the psychosexual and the polygraph. He knows there's no way he's going to beat those.
So the morning of Sunday, February 5th, Chuck had gone to church early.
I knew they were going for their visit, and they were making it clear to my wife and myself, we don't want to see him today. No, we don't want to go.
I picked up the boys. They were waiting with their grandmother, and I expected to return the boys in about 4.5 hours.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how the story would have ended. When you talk about a tragedy, this is it.
The morning of Sunday, February 5th, Elizabeth Griffin Hall arrived at the rental house, parked out front, and as children do, Charlie and Braden got out of their car seats.
They rushed to the front door, which is what they always did. I was 1 or 2 steps in back of them. The kids just rushed in. I saw Josh for just 1 second. His eyes caught mine, and he had a look in his eyes.
She looks him straight in the face. He slams the door in her face and locks it.
I knocked and I knocked and I rang the doorbell and I started yelling at Josh, let me in. And I heard him say, Charlie, I've got a big surprise for you.
And immediately she smelled gasoline, and she knew it was an emergency situation.
I'm on a supervised visitation for a court-ordered visit,
and something really weird has happened. I think I need help right away. He looked right at me and closed the door.
All right, we'll have somebody look for you there.
Okay, how long will it be?
I don't know, ma'am. They have to respond to emergency, life-threatening situations first. The first available deputy.
Well, this could be life-threatening. He went to court on Wednesday, and he didn't get his kids back. And this is really, I'm afraid for their lives.
Okay, has he threatened the lives of the children previously?
I have no idea.
All right, we'll have the first available deputy contact you.
February 5th, 2012, Super Bowl Sunday.
I went to church. I came home, Super Bowl Sunday.
I remember watching the Super Bowl that day and seeing the reports come in.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John DeCepolo. We are interrupting your programming for some breaking news.
And I got a call from my neighbor, and he said, change the channel.
I was actually in Indianapolis. The Patriots were playing the Giants at the Super Bowl.
Patriots lead the Giants 10-9 at halftime.
And I was there with my family. And it was halftime, and Madonna was about to take center stage.
As Madonna takes the stage to perform Vogue, Abby's in the stadium concourse trying to absorb the text she just received.
I get a text, pops up on my phone.
There has been a fatal explosion at the home of...
Oh my God, and I thought like natural gas or something, and they said they found 3 bodies.
There's a fire, the house exploded, and we're hearing that Josh and Charlie and Braden were inside.
This can't be, this can't be.
And I thought, no, that can't be real. I would have heard something.
And I called Susan's father. I said, Chuck, is it true?
Chuck, is it true? Is it true? He said, yes. And I didn't even say goodbye. I just hung up the phone and started crying.
Went talked to a sergeant or whatever. He said, yeah, they're there, and they're dead.
Honestly, I wasn't surprised. And the actions that he made after she went missing, I never underestimated him.
And then to find out the details.
Found the hatchet, the boys, in one of the gas cans.
And then after he had incapacitated them, he arranged them on the floor next to each other and poured gasoline on and around them and around the house. And then he sat on a gas can and lit a match, and they were still alive.
Police say there's clear evidence Josh planned out this house explosion and meant to kill himself and his children.
The morning of the 5th, he sent a couple of text messages and voicemails to people, essentially saying goodbye. His sister Alina found one when it was too late to intervene after the explosion.
What did he say? I think he said, hello, this is Josh.
I am not able to live without my sons, and I'm not able to go on anymore. I'm sorry to everyone.
He had lost.
You know, he used the axe first, and to find out that he said to them, you know, I have a surprise for you. Any little bit of doubt that anyone could have possibly had that Josh killed Susan had to have gone out the window. The fact that he could have done that to his kids.
This wasn't tragic. I don't know anything else I could have done. And they're still dead. My daughter's still missing, and now the children are dead. I had them safe. They were in my care. They were gone.
I was frustrated.
Be accountable and make them pay for the deaths of their grandchildren.
You'll cut that out of the tape, right?
Hey, Braden. Hold still.
That's the saddest part, is you look at photos of Josh and Susan, Charlie and Braden, and you think about what could have been. Those boys deserve to grow up, and they never got the chance.
We've been robbed of 3 precious lives, and it's just unthinkable that the same person did it.
Why take the kids? Why? It makes absolutely no sense.
My worst nightmare had just happened. But I went from praying that somehow Susan was alive to praying now that she was dead so that she could greet her boys in heaven.
Flowers, balloons, and stuffed animals offered in memory of Charlie and Braden Powell.
Why would he go through so much to get custody of the boys only to murder them?
Come here, Charlie.
Here we go, Charlie. Hey, buddy.
Well, one of the possibilities is he destroyed the evidence. Those boys were starting to talk. And by destroying the evidence, basically he committed murder on his two boys.
It shows how much of a monster he really was. And it shows how many people dropped the ball in this case.
I was frustrated with the Child Protective Service Agency. Why would they put this single woman in charge of these boys and send her into the lion's den? It made no sense to me.
I wanted to get the kid.
I wish she could. She did everything right. There's no blame on her at all. Anybody puts any blame on her, it's misdirected.
The Coxes have filed a lawsuit against the state of Washington on behalf of Braden and Charlie. It's a wrongful death lawsuit, and their position is that the state of Washington put Josh's parental rights before the welfare of these boys.
The Cox family lawsuit didn't include Elizabeth Griffin Hall or any other individuals as defendants.
The fact is she was not the one that made the decision for this to be in the home. So to a certain extent, she's lucky she's alive. And she's, I think, a victim in a lot of ways, too.
They filed this lawsuit, $35 million for Braden blown up.
Everybody?
You have a civil case against the state that started in February, was disrupted because of COVID-19.
Please now give your attention to Mr. Buck as he presents the plaintiff's final argument.
It is out of the state's failure to live up to their own primary directive of assuring the safety of the children that this tragedy was born. What was the place that had the least protection? Josh Powell's home. What about the level of risk? Then the state learned of the boy's statements. It learned of this incest images. It learned that he was going to have to undergo a psychosexual evaluation, a polygraph. If the state had followed its policies, its guidelines, common sense, investigated, had visitations where it was supposed to have them, none of this would have happened. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this will be the only and final time that you hear from the state in this matter. The state took this very serious. They did their job. They followed their policies. Yes, the fact that Susan Powell was missing was known, but after more than 2 years after her disappearance, still no arrest, no charges against Josh Powell. It actually takes facts and proof to remove a child from their parent, to keep them out of the home. The guides on visitation shows the #1 preferred location is at a parent's home. That's why transition to a home occurs. The goal in these type of cases is always family reunification. I'm going to submit to you that Mr. Powell is the sole cause of the murder of his sons. It was not due to any negligence by the state of Washington. It was Mr. Powell who did this.
The truth of the fact of the matter is, they're the only ones who could have protected the children at that point. They're the ones with responsibility.
Has the jury reached a verdict, ma'am?
All please rise.
Please be seated.
Court is reconvened.
Has the jury reached a verdict, ma'am?
If it pleases the court, we have.
Was the state of Washington negligent? Answer, yes. What do you find Plaintiff Charles Powell's total amount of damages, $57,500,000. Braden Powell's total amount of damages, $57,500,000.
For 8 years, the Cox family has been trying to find justice. And it took us a long time. And we took a long hiatus with the pandemic. Today, justice has been meted out.
What I intend to do is use the award to try and help other people in that so that we can save more children.
Jury members told ABC News they didn't believe any one individual at Child Protective Services was responsible for what happened. They blame a systematic failure for the tragedy.
It just came down to this. You cannot have reunification, as your goal at the expense of child safety. And, lawsuits change things. Brown versus Board of Education, Roe v. Wade. That's how things change.
So 2020 reached out to several agencies in both states, and they declined to comment or refer us to other departments. In the end, we were unable to get an answer to our questions. Could the actions of these agencies, or their inactions, have contributed to the murders of Braden and Charlie Powell?
It should have never have got to the point where you had Josh getting his kids into that house and blowing it up.
I think that it is just one of those cases that will always kind of have a place in Utah's consciousness. And I think a big part of that is we still don't know what happened. We still don't know where Susan Powell is.
Does everyone believe that he harmed his wife? The answer is yes. That's what everyone believes. But what you believe and what you can prove are two different things.
Josh's actions are definitely an admission of guilt. She's going to divorce him. If he can't have her, nobody will. So he kidnaps Susan and most likely murders her and disposes of her body. Where? Nobody knows.
The last that she was seen, and Josh, who never cooked, made pancakes for dinner. People think he poisoned her, of course, because he made them separate. She felt sick and sleepy. Giovanna Owings saw that, and then she's never heard from again.
I know there are 10,000 abandoned mines in Utah. That's a lot of places where you can dump a body.
There's so many theories, I don't know which one it is, but I guarantee you, Susan Cox Powell did not leave that home willingly at midnight to go camping.
This was a family that was not known to the West Valley City, Utah Police Department. They had never been called to the house. But in other ways, Josh was just a classic abuser. He was controlling.
My heart absolutely breaks for Chuck and Judy Cox. Think about what this couple has gone through. They lost their daughter. Both of their grandbabies were horrifically butchered. And the only three people that could shed any light on this are dead.
Her story will continue to live on and inspire others to move in the right direction, to move towards good relationships and get out of bad situations, abusive situations.
Lily Aramburu has recently given birth to a son named Paulden.
Oh, she was the happiest mother. She was dedicated and very proud of her baby.
She is also newly engaged to her boyfriend, Christian Pacheco.
I thought this is what Lily needs, somebody that can support her emotionally, somebody stronger, having already some kind of life going. And I thought it was going to be a good thing.
We were in love. We had a good time. We enjoyed each other's company.
After a few months of being together, Lily decides to move into Christian's condo in Kendall.
I felt as if Lily was on the right track. She was taking care of herself. She seemed fine.
But Lily's path has not always been a smooth one. Growing up in Miami, Lily had lots of friends and was known as a sweet, peaceful girl who loved nature.
She would like to be in the park or just being in nature, whatever it was. Even if it's just walking anywhere, she will like pay attention to a tree, a flower, a bird, any kind of animals. She would admire everything and feel part of it.
But in her teen years, Lily begins spending more and more time with her friends.
The crowd that she was hanging out with, they were having a lot of fun, but also there was started to be a little too much fun. So they were a little bit out of control.
Lucely begins to grow concerned about her daughter's extracurricular activities.
I'm sure there was a lot of alcohol involved, a lot of partying, possibly pot at that time, if not other drugs.
Before long, Lily drops out of high school, and she starts spending many nights away from home.
One of the times I did not hear from her for about 2-3 weeks, which is, almost the longest that I ever been without contact.
Lucely finds out why her daughter isn't communicating from one of Lily's friends. Lily has started experimenting with heroin.
And of course, I panicked and I looked for help, and I went to look for her.
Lucely drives all over Miami for 2 days, searching for her daughter. And then, near a park in Coconut Grove, something catches her eye.
I saw some rocks and I saw a little head, and I just recognized my daughter's hair. And I stopped, and sure enough, that was her. She did not look good. She looked very, very weak. And I just looked at her and broke my heart. I never seen her so skinny and so bad in my life.
Over the next few years, Lily becomes increasingly involved with heroin and crack. Her life seems to be spiraling downward. And then, in January of 2006, Lily gets some life-changing news. She is pregnant with her boyfriend's child.
She was surprised. She wasn't expecting that. She was very happy.
For Lily, finding out she was pregnant provided an incentive to turn her life around.
She definitely wanted to stop the use of drugs, and she wanted to change her life knowing that there was another person coming into life and she was responsible for it.
She changed completely. She was very positive. She started taking care of things in her life that had been neglected in the past. So it was a very happy time for her.
To Lily's mother and her close friend Janet Forte, it looks like Lily is finally headed in the right direction.
She was thrilled about it, and it was the happiest moment, the happiest time of her life.
In September of 2006, Lily gives birth to a baby boy and names him Paulden.
She was nurturing, very loving. She was always holding him, always carrying him and hugging him.
In the meantime, Lily breaks up with her boyfriend and starts getting closer to one of her friends, Christian Pacheco.
I told her, I was always in love with you. I always loved you. And she's like, I love you. I've always had those feelings for you.
What happened, I believe, after Lily giving birth, she felt a little bit too lonely. And Christian was always pursuing her, telling her that he would always be there and offering all these things for her, that security, comfort.
Within a month, Christian and Lily are engaged to be married. And that's when Lily moves into Christian's condo.
We talked and I said, you want to stay? You want to move in? She's like, yeah, I do. So that's how we ended up living together.
At first, things seemed to be going well.
Lily was happy to be with Christian.
It felt, like we're a family. We would take walks at night together. There were many times we go out to the beach, swimming in the water and having fun.
But all too soon, Lucely starts to notice a change in her daughter.
I can just tell that she wasn't all that happy. It was just that she wasn't open. She would not tell me what was going on. I thought they were probably having a little bit of, adjusting problems and stuff.
I thought, being that I hadn't heard from her, I thought it was a good thing. I thought that she was getting her life in order with her fiancé.
What Lily's mother and her friend Janet don't know is that Lily is back on drugs. Both she and Christian have been using heroin and crack cocaine, sometimes for days on end.
After 3 days of that, your mind starts, just playing tricks on you and getting the better of you. And that's where the problem started. You should be very agitated, very on edge about the littlest things.
Lily and Christian begin fighting frequently. On several occasions, the police are called to the condo.
I didn't know they were fighting until one day that they called me up and said that there was an argument at the house and the police was there and child services were involved. That's when I knew they were fighting a lot. Alden was removed from the house. He went to a foster home while Lily was in drug court.
Lily is devastated.
This day had taken her pride and joy away from her, and I couldn't do anything for her. Except try to be there to console her, and talk to her and say, look, we just have to do the right thing. So whatever process they want you to go through, we got to go through.
Lily checks into a local rehab program, hoping that she can regain custody of Paulden after a 3-month stay.
It was a live-in facility, and it was one of the best. So she was very happy about that. She was ready.
But after just 2 weeks, Christian gets a discouraging call from Lily.
Wednesday, she calls me up and says that I'm out. And she's crying.
Lily has relapsed. She had failed a mandatory drug test and was kicked out of the program.
Christian picked her up and took her to his house. I wasn't allowed to be with her at the moment because she had no visitations with the baby. And that same day that she got released from the rehab, I got temporary custody of the baby. So she wasn't allowed to be near the baby at that time.
Lucely goes home alone with Paulden, desperate to help her daughter, but unsure how to do it. At 2 a.m. on June 2nd, Lucely's phone rings. It's Christian, and he has some disturbing news.
I'm sleeping, and I get this phone call from Christian telling me that Lily walked out of the house and that she hasn't coming back and that he filed a missing persons report.
Christian tells Lucely that Lily had left the house the night before after arguing with Christian. Lucely is not sure what to make of Christian's call.
I thought that was odd, but I didn't think much of it. They probably had a fight and that she was gonna come back.
At the time, Lucely has no idea that Lily has disappeared. Coming up, a troubling incident might shed light on Lily's disappearance.
She was just really, really drunk, and she tried to hang herself in my closet. I broke the pole down, put her on the bed. She's still frantic, still crying.
In 7, 23-year-old Lily Aramburu has walked out of her boyfriend Christian's condo. After 2 days, she still hasn't come home, and Lily's loved ones are becoming concerned.
The only thing that I remember her telling me is Christian says Lily went missing and he already reported her missing, not to worry.
I thought that she just had a fight with Christian and she went to somebody else's house for a while, but she was gonna call me and let me know that she was okay, and that just never happened.
According to the police report that Christian filed, Lily had walked out of the condo at around 2 a.m. the night before. He also told police what Lily had been wearing and what she might be carrying with her.
What I did see her last wearing was a nightgown. She was sitting at my desk playing with a pair of my bungee cords. And the next day, I looked around the house and I couldn't find them.
Strangely, the bungee cords Christian used on his bike rack are missing, but Lily had left everything else behind.
She left her phone there, she left her purse there, she left everything at my house. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would she leave everything? You know, if she was gonna leave, why wouldn't she at least take a phone with her or something?
Days go by with no word from Lily. So Lily's mother and her friend Janet decide to pay Christian a visit to find out more about the events leading up to Lily's disappearance.
Christian didn't know that we were coming. We showed up at his house, and he was very, very nervous and very energetic.
They immediately start asking Christian questions about the night of May 31st.
And he started telling us, what happened.
According to Christian, after he picked Lily up from rehab, they decided to buy drugs at a rundown crack house in Coconut Grove. From there, they went back to the condo with two friends, EJ and Kelly. At one point, Kelly leaves the room.
I guess it was too noisy out in the living room floor, so she went into the bedroom, lay down. Lily and I were talking, and she got upset that Kelly went into the bedroom. So she was like, you want to be with Kelly now, blah, blah, blah.
Christian promises Lily that nothing is going on between Kelly and him, and asks Kelly to leave their bedroom.
I went back to talk to Kelly. He said, look, give us our room tonight. Lily's not in a good mood.
But before Christian returns to the living room, Lily leaves.
I figured maybe she went to, a lot of times when Lily's upset, she likes to pick flowers. She likes to just have her peaceful time with nature. But then, as the day went on to the next night, I was really starting to get panicky. Like, what happened? Like, where did she go? Why would she just disappear on me like this?
One possible theory is that Lily is still out wandering the street in a drug-induced fog. But another element of Christian's police report raises a more troubling possibility.
Lily was diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression.
The diagnosis had come during Lily's stint at rehab the previous month.
I was in shock that a person can have all these diagnoses at once. I knew she was depressed, and I thought it was postpartum depression.
Lily was also on medication for depression and anxiety, and according to Christian, she had stopped taking it. One possibility investigators must consider is that Lily has taken her own life. She may have even used the bungee cords to hang herself somewhere outside her home. In fact, according to Christian, she had tried to hang herself just a few weeks earlier.
She was just really, really drunk, and she tried to hang herself in my closet. I broke the pole down, put her on the bed. She's still frantic, still crying, and finally was able to calm her down and went to bed that night.
Despite Lily's recent psychological evaluation, Lucely and Janet cannot believe that she has committed suicide.
Killing herself, not even in the moment like that was so bad, Lily would have done it. It wasn't on her.
They also don't think she left intentionally.
At that time, I really didn't know what to think, but I felt as if something was wrong. I felt uneasy and worried. I did not think it was a possibility that she simply took off.
Still, Lily's mother decides to continue looking for Lily all over Miami.
I got in the car and I started looking on the areas that I thought she could possibly be, to the extreme. I was very scared in a way, but I knew I had to do that, so I did. And I ended up being in the worst places ever, like horrible crack houses.
For weeks, Lucely maintains the hope that she will find Lily alive.
Every time I went there, I thought, the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna find her.
Meanwhile, the police conduct searches of the area surrounding the condo. But they find nothing. And then, Lily's mother gets a surprise call from Christian. Two of his friends have seen Lily.
Christian told me that this person had called him and told him that he had seen Lily in downtown Miami.
Lucely immediately calls one of the men to confirm the sighting.
And I said, are you sure? Tell me exactly, where did you see her? Did you talk to her? What was she wearing? And he just assured me that it was her, that he talked to her, you know, that it was real.
With fresh hope that her daughter is alive somewhere in Miami, Lucely and Janet renew their search. Coming up, suspicions grow about the very person who reported Lily missing.
His behavior was very strange, and he would not look at us. It sticks out a lot because he did not act like a concerned boyfriend or fiancé.
Rose mother and her friend Janet Forte have been searching all over Miami for Lily ever since she disappeared on June 1st, 2007. And now that two of her friends have supposedly seen Lily downtown, they intensify their search.
Her mom and I went out looking for Lily. We went all over town, up and down, Overtown, Coconut Grove, Kendall, everywhere and anywhere we thought that we might hear something or find her.
I thought I was gonna find my daughter like in the next corner. And I did that for about 3-4 months. I thought I was gonna see her coming home. Every phone call, I thought it was her.
But they find no sign of Lily anywhere.
I think I started feeling as if something was really wrong after about 2 months. Before then, I was hoping, I was just praying to God that she was somewhere and she'd turn up. But the fact that so much time had passed and she had not made a phone call was very, very strange, especially for a new mother. I mean, she loved her son so much. I just could not see her walking away from him.
And as Lucely and Janet think back over the events surrounding Lily's disappearance, they begin to wonder about one of the last people to have seen Lily. Her fiancé, Christian Pacheco.
I started having this feeling that there was something odd.
For one, Lucely wonders why Christian waited an entire day before filing a missing persons report.
I'd called the police earlier, but they said you can't file a missing persons report for 24 to 48 hours unless it's a minor. Should I file the report Sunday morning? Maybe. I don't know, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was worried about where she was. I wanted to find her.
Lucely also wonders why Christian never called her before he called the police to see if she had heard from Lily.
At one point, I thought Kelly had talked to Lily's mom, or somebody talked to Lily's mom.
And when Janet thinks back about Christian's behavior when they met a few days after Lily disappeared, she becomes even more suspicious.
His behavior was very strange, and he would not look at us. He would be talking, but he was cleaning his house at the time. It sticks out a lot because he did not act like a concerned boyfriend or fiancé.
Janet and Lucely begin to think Christian may know more than he is saying. Although he says his behavior at the time was the result of his emotional anguish.
I was spiraling into such depression, and I was going to Overtown buying 20 bags of dope a day, trying to basically overdose. I just wanted to dull the pain of her being gone. I was feeling abandoned.
Still, Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte make their suspicions known to the Miami-Dade Police Department. In the meantime, all Janet and Lucely can do is continue their search.
We never stopped. Every moment that we had to search for her, we did. And always hoping that there was a lead out there, a tip out there, that someone had seen her, that we can get information. But that never happened.
More than a year has gone by since Lily Aramburu first went missing. And both Janet and Lucely feel that not enough is being done to find her.
Because of my frustration with police, frustration with the media, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't just sit by and just wait for her to come back. I had to find out, what I can actively do to help.
Janet launches a social media campaign to spread the word about Lily's disappearance.
I started the blog, and after that, I started doing Twitter and Facebook for her.
And then, in September of 2008, Janet's hard work pays off.
Finally, someone was kind enough to write an article on our local paper, the Miami New Times.
That's when private investigators Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza read about the case and decide to offer their services pro bono. Finally, Lily's disappearance is attracting some attention.
We took on the case because Lily Aramburu is a mother and somebody's daughter, and she's lost and she needs to be found. It was my opinion, just from reading the article, that the police department probably was not doing all that they could.
At the same time, the article seems to provoke some renewed interest from police, specifically in Christian Pacheco.
The police just jumped into action, and they picked up Christian soon after, and they took him in to take the polygraph.
But when the results come in, Janet and Lucely's suspicions seem to be put to rest.
And from what the detective told us was that Christian passed it. He passed the polygraph.
If you pass a polygraph, that goes pretty far in eliminating you from being a person of interest with us or law enforcement. So that took our focus away from Christian.
But in order to get a clearer idea of the sequence of events on the night Lily disappeared, Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza decide to meet with the last known people to have seen Lily: Kelly, EJ, and Christian. According to Carrillo, Kelly tells them all about the events of that night, including the argument between Lily and Christian.
And we also asked her where else Lily may have gone, because the article said that she just walked out and left. And there was only one other place that Kelly knew of, and that was a home in Coconut Grove that was a crack house.
It was a place we'd stopped over earlier that day.
According to Christian, the house was home to an array of unsavory activities.
Guys pimping out their girlfriends or forcing their girlfriends to have intercourse with people for drugs. Standard crack house. The floors were tore up, the walls were tore up, there was no toilet, there was no running water, there was no refrigerator, there's no electricity.
Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza find out that one of the men who hangs out at the house has an extensive criminal record that includes second-degree murder. And they begin to wonder if Lily went to the house in Coconut Grove and became the victim of foul play.
I really felt that that's what could have happened, that she went over there and something happened.
It's hard to speculate what may have happened in that house. All I know as an investigator is that she had frequented the house before, and there is a person in that house that has killed somebody before.
Coming up, a stunning revelation in the case documents leads investigators to a new suspect.
I didn't fall out of my chair because I think it was a big chair.
Private investigators Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza have stumbled on a new lead in the mysterious disappearance of 23-year-old Lily Aramburu. They think that Lily may have walked or hitchhiked to a rundown crack house in Coconut Grove.
In the heat of our little argument, when I was trying to get Kelly out of the room and she had left, you know, I thought, yeah, maybe she had hitchhiked over there.
The private investigators begin looking into everyone connected to the house.
So how do we get to what happened there? I tried to talk to the individual who ran that house.
After numerous attempts, Joe finally reaches the man on the phone.
Then I said, listen, I think some girl may have died in that house. I says, I'm not a cop. I won't even work with the cops if you'll trust me, but I need to find this girl.
The owner doesn't give Joe much information, but Joe learns from another source that the man who had served time for second-degree murder is currently out on bond on an open cocaine charge. The timing would be perfect to pick him up for questioning, but Joe doesn't have the authority.
What I want to do is build a case and hand it over to the detectives who can do something to this guy. We're limited in what we can do. We were basically out there gathering facts to pass it on to law enforcement so they could do what they do.
But after briefly investigating the crack house, the police take no further action. Soon, with all the leads running out, and a police force that cannot commit the necessary resources to the investigation, the case goes cold. Two years have gone by with no new leads. Lily's son, Paulden, is now 3 years old. And to mark Lily's 26th birthday, Lily's mother and Janet Forte decide to take a drastic step to raise awareness.
We thought it would be a good idea to have a hunger strike. We felt it was extreme, but for us it was the only thing that would get the attention, you know, that we were looking for.
Janet and I just sat down in downtown Miami for a whole week in a hunger strike, trying to get attention, because at the time we were really frustrated that nobody would pick up the story and nobody knew that Lily was missing. We were very frustrated with the police. They never really did much, and they weren't sharing anything, any information of the little bit of work that they were doing. So we were in limbo, really.
Así es que tal, muy buenas noches. Una madre desesperada que
Several local Spanish media outlets cover the hunger strike. But sadly, the renewed attention to the case doesn't bring in any fresh information.
So I think the whole Miami knew that Lily was missing, but we never got a lead.
Still, by December of 2010, their efforts may be finding some traction. Miami-Dade homicide detective Ray Hoadley hears about the case from a colleague and volunteers to take it on himself.
I made a decision and asked the people that I work for in the Homicide Bureau if we could take a look at the case and review it. And they agreed to let me do that.
And from, you know, the moment I met him, I knew that, you know, things were gonna get better for the investigation. And it was the first time in 3 years that I felt, you know, positive, and just, he changed my whole view of the police department, this man.
Detective Hoadley begins his investigation by going through all of the existing case files.
It seemed like there was a lot of information in the file, but a lot of the information hadn't been verified.
It also seems to Detective Hoadley that the story in the initial police report doesn't quite make sense.
It just seemed very unusual that a female would walk out of an apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning wearing only a nightgown, without any money, without any credit cards, without a phone. When all that was available to her at the apartment she left from.
And as Detective Hoadley sifts through the case files, he comes upon a document relating to Lily's fiancé, Christian Pacheco, that could dramatically redirect the rest of the investigation. It's the polygraph test administered to Christian in 2008.
We found the polygraph report in the case file which showed that he had not passed it. There was deception noted to the question, do you know what happened to Lily? During my initial briefing with missing persons, I was told that he had, in fact, passed a polygraph.
Joe Carrillo, Janet, and Lucelli had also been told that Christian passed the test, with no deception indicated.
And I didn't fall out of my chair because I think it was a big chair, you know, and I said, what? He said, Christian failed his polygraph. I said, the one they gave him in 08? And he says, yes.
It appears that somehow the results had initially been miscommunicated to everybody. And suddenly, the focus of the investigation shifts dramatically.
So after that was when the investigation was turned towards Christian.
But before Detective Hoadley meets with Christian himself, he needs to essentially start from scratch.
So we started at the very beginning and tried to redo the entire investigation.
Now, Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte have newfound hope that Paulden may someday find out what happened to his mother. Coming up, suspicions grow, and Lily's mother becomes even more desperate for answers.
Somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and I need to know where my daughter is, dead or alive.
More than 3 years since Lily Aramburo disappeared, and now homicide detective Ray Hoadley has taken over the investigation. He begins by looking into each possible scenario to see what he can rule out. First, he returns to Lily's last known whereabouts, Christian Pacheco's condo, to be sure that Lily's body is nowhere in the vicinity.
So we came back and searched that property. We had canine come out. We had cadaver dogs that were used.
He went out on Christmas week. I'll never forget. They went diving into the canal behind the apartment. They cut down huge amount of weeds looking for Lily.
And we used aviation to photograph the area and document what we were doing.
But investigators don't find any evidence of Lily. Next, Detective Hoadley takes a closer look at the early sightings of Lily that were reported a few weeks after she disappeared.
The persons supposedly that had seen Lily had never been interviewed, so I said, well, we need to establish if she's been seen after her disappearance. It makes it an entirely different investigation than if she was never seen afterwards.
Detective Hoadley tracks down the two friends, Elvis and Dario, who had supposedly seen Lily back in 2007.
We located Dario, who was still living in the Miami area, and spoke to him about it. And he said absolutely positively he had never seen her.
When Hoadley reaches Elvis and asks him if he'd seen Lily, he too says he did not. But his story is even more interesting.
Christian told him that if he would tell Lucelli that he had seen Lily downtown or seen and spoken to her, it would make Lucelli feel better and wouldn't be worrying about Lily as much. And finally, Elvis agreed to do that because Christian was paying for his drugs.
They were lying. They never saw her.
Hoadley thinks that Christian may have fabricated the sightings to cover up his own involvement in Lily's disappearance. Christian, however, vehemently rejects this line of thought.
I told nobody to say they saw Lily because if you saw Lily, I wanted you to come with your own merit and it to be a true, factual thing. And for reasons beyond my comprehension, he had said that I told him to say that he'd seen Lily, and there's no way that is possible.
It's still unclear what did happen to Lily. For one thing, Hoadley doubts she's been out wandering the streets without contacting anybody.
She would never have spent that amount of time away from her son without contacting her family. It wasn't the way she was. Whatever her faults were, she cared deeply for her son and was very close to her mom.
I hate to say it, but if she was alive, she would have called. She would have found a way.
Detective Hoadley also looks into the crack house one more time as a possible site of foul play.
There's no evidence of any sort that Lily went to that house that night. There were some people that lived in that house that had prior criminal records, but there was nothing linking Lily to those people or to that house.
Now, with the sightings of Lily discounted and a murder at the crack house improbable, it appears more likely to Hoadley that something happened to Lily at Christian's condo. So he decides to sit down with the one person who might have some answers, Christian Pacheco.
I said, Christian, that doesn't make any sense that she would walk out and take a bungee cord and not take her phone, not take her money, not take her identification, not wearing any shoes, but she would remember to take a bungee cord. And he said, I thought she was going to kill herself.
And then, Christian's story about Lily's attempt to hang herself in his closet changed.
At one point, he says it was a tie, and another point, he says it was a bungee cord, because he can't remember which to say.
Hoadley suspects that Christian may have made up the suicide story in order to mislead investigators. He convinces Christian to take another polygraph test, and the results, he says, speak for themselves.
He failed it. It showed deception in the knowing what happened to her.
Hoadley says, I don't know, he said, I failed this other one. I don't know. I don't see how it's like, it's the nerves, nervousness or whatever it could be with this whole situation just, eats at me. And do I have guilt? Yes. I have guilt on that I didn't give her that compassion.
In April of 2011, the police searched the wooded area near the condo again. But they find nothing, leaving Lily's mother desperate for answers.
Somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and I need to know where my daughter is, dead or alive. I need to find out what happened to her. She's my daughter, my only daughter.
Detective Hoadley has since retired from the Miami-Dade police, but his suspicions remain intact.
And I think sooner or later, the truth will come out. I believe she died that night. I don't know how she died. I don't think we've been told the truth.
Proof is that he failed the polygraph. Proof to me is that he was always avoiding me. Proof is that if he was about to marry my daughter, he would just make a phone call and ask me in 4 years, how are you? How is Spalding? Do you know anything about Lily? I never got that. So to me, that's screaming guilt. He's hiding something.
Despite the accusations swirling around him, Christian Pacheco maintains his innocence.
If I had something to do with her disappearance, why would I force the police to take a missing persons report when I could have let that go as long as I wanted to, right? I had nothing to do with Lily's disappearance. There's nothing that I knew more than her leaving my apartment. And there's nothing I know. There's nobody I'd spoken with. There's nobody that I've talked to that has any idea, along with myself, about what happened to Lily that night after she left.
All Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte can do is try to move on with their lives.
We need to find her. Her family needs some sort of resolution. I can't imagine her son growing up not knowing what happened to his mother and thinking that she abandoned him or something like that.
I kept moving forward because I have a tremendous gift, a tremendous blessing, which is Lily's son, which